look at example 8. On this one, we're dealing with a fraction. Now, before we can actually do this problem, we need to get everything on one side, just like we did when we were factoring. So I'm going to move that 1 over to the left. If it's positive 1 on the right, it's like subtracting 1. When we move it over, it's going to make it minus 1. So I'm going to have 5 over x plus 4 minus 1, and I'm going to leave some space here. And then over here, it's going to be greater than or equal to 0. Now, the reason I left some space is I know that I need a common denominator. And the only denominator I see is x plus 4. So I need to multiply the top and the bottom by x plus 4. And that will give me a common denominator. So let's do that. The next step, I'm going to bring down my 5 over x plus 4. Okay, and then I'm going to distribute here. Bring down your minus. 1 times x is 1x. 1 times 4 is 4. And that's all over x plus 4. Bring down your greater than or equal to 0. I just distributed that 1 on top. Now I need to distribute the negative. You could have done that in the same step. I just didn't want to confuse anybody. But now I'm going to be dealing with this minus sign right here. So I'm going to be distributing that negative to both of these. We are subtracting both. And I'm going to have one denominator. So let me bring down the 5. And then I'm going to make a big fraction bar and put x plus 4. Because that's our common denominator. Now negative 1 times 1x is negative 1x. Of course, you don't need the 1, but we'll leave it there. Negative 1 times positive 4 is negative 4. And then I'm going to bring down my greater than or equal to 0. Now, you could have done those last two steps together, but you need to be extremely careful that you distribute that negative to that positive 4. So let's simplify the numerator. Let's go up here. I have a 5 and a negative 4. So positive 5, negative 4 gives me a positive 1. And then I still have my negative x all over x plus 4. Fix that. Is greater than or equal to 0. Now, once I have everything on one side, I have my fraction. What you do is you take the numerator and the denominator, and you set them both equal to 0 to get your numbers on the number line. So I'm going to say 1 minus x equals 0, and x plus 4 equals 0. So on the left here, let's get the x by itself. I'm going to subtract 1. So I get negative x equals negative 1. I don't want negative x. I want positive x. So I divide both sides by negative 1, and I get x equals positive 1. So that's going to be one of the numbers on my number line. On the right, I need to subtract 4, and I'm going to get x is equal to negative 4. Let's put those on the number line. So we have positive 1 and negative 4. The negative 4 is smaller, so it's obviously going on the left. Positive 1 is larger, it's going on the right. So the next thing we need to do is figure out which one makes this true. Okay, so I'm either going to be shading, like we've talked about before. It's either going to be the middle makes it true or the outsides make it true. The easiest number to try is 0. Since 0 is between negative 4 and 1, I'm going to try that. If it works, I'm going to shade the middle because that's where 0 is. If it doesn't work, then I'm shading the outside. So let's go back to the original problem and put in a 0 for x. That gives me 5/4 is greater than or equal to 1. Well, 5/4 is 1 1/4. It is greater than 1. So the 0 did work. I want to go back to my number line and I want to shade where the 0 is. So I'm shading the middle. Now we need to be very careful on the next part Because your first instinct when you see a greater than or equal to is to put brackets on both ends. Now what those brackets mean is that both endpoints actually work. But in this case, they do not. I need to erase that last bracket and make it a parenthesis. So let's talk about why. If I go back to the original equation and put a -4 right here, -4 plus 4 is 0. I end up with something that's undefined. I can never make my original equation undefined, so I cannot use a bracket at -4. I can use one at 1 because that gives me 5 on bottom, and that's okay. I cannot use one at -4 because it gives me 0 on bottom. So always double check your denominator when you're doing fractions. You can't have 0. Now this is going to make this one a little bit different when we do interval notation. Our left endpoint is a -4 with a parenthesis. Then we put a comma. And our right endpoint is a +1 with a bracket because that endpoint is included in the solution. 1 actually works. So everything greater than -4 and less than or equal to 1 will make that a true statement. So you can have a parenthesis and a bracket in your interval notation. It does happen.